Dominic Hayes stood in the marble lobby of Sinclair Tower, 43 stories of steel and glass, rising above Boston's financial district like a monument to money that never looked twice at the men who kept its water coolers stocked. The dolly wheels squeaked against polished floors, each rotation a small reminder of the distance between this world and the three-bedroom walk-up in Dorchester where his daughter was learning to read lips because her hearing aid needed an upgrade he couldn't afford. The elevator doors opened on the 27th floor. A woman emerged, and Dominic's first thought was that she'd been carved from the building itself. Black suit sharp enough to draw blood, heels that clicked once before stopping. Her eyes were the color of a winter Atlantic, cold and impossibly deep, assessing him the way people assessed art they were considering buying. Dominic jerked the dolly left, water bottles rattled. She didn't move. Their eyes met. 7 years of delivering to this building had taught him one rule: the moment you drop your gaze, you become furniture. Dominic held hers. The security guard jogged over, already apologetic. Before he could speak, she raised one hand. The guard froze mid-step. Her voice came low, controlled, the kind that didn't need volume. "What's your name?" Dominic adjusted his grip on the dolly. "The guy with the hand truck, not exactly on your radar." Something flickered across her face, gone before he could name it. "I didn't ask for your resume." Dominic Hayes. She tilted her head slightly, and he caught the calculation behind those eyes. Numbers running, odds being weighed. "Are you free Saturday night?" The question landed wrong, all edges. Dominic glanced at the security guard, who'd gone very still. "Saturday, I'm helping my daughter with a science project. Volcanoes. Messy. I need you to come with me to a wedding." The absurdity of it should have been funny. Instead, Dominic felt that old instinct kick in. The one that used to read boardrooms before he lost the right to enter them. This wasn't a pickup line. This was business, and business always had teeth. "Whose wedding?" "My ex-fiance's." No hesitation, no embarrassment, just fact delivered like quarterly earnings. "He left me 6 months ago. Now he's marrying someone else." Dominic set the dolly down slowly. "And you want me to do what exactly? Make a scene? Flash a smile, be your well-dressed rebound?" She stepped closer. The scent of bergamot cut through the lobby's recycled air, something expensive that people wore when they stopped checking price tags. "I want him to regret everything, and I want you to be the reason." The honesty of it hit harder than any lie would have. Dominic had been lied to by experts, people who made deceit look like devotion. This woman wasn't bothering with the performance. "Lady, you could hire a model, an actor, someone who actually fits. They don't have your eyes." Dominic blinked. Not because it was flattery. It wasn't. It was precision, a scalpel finding exactly where to cut. He thought of Zara's audiologist appointment next month, the upgraded hearing aid they'd discussed, the one insurance called elective. $9,500. Add the legal fees still hanging from the custody battle, 3 years gone, the rent increase coming in 45 days, and Saturday night suddenly had a price tag. How much? 75,000. She said it the way other people said coffee, something routine barely worth mentioning. One night. No touching, no romantic charades, just be polite, poised, and make him feel insignificant. Dominic's throat went dry. 75,000. He could cover Zara's hearing aid, the medical debt, the legal bills from when Sienna had tried and failed to get visitation rights. 8 months of breathing room, maybe 9. Could stop lying awake doing math that never added up. Stop telling his daughter next month when she asked about the summer camp her friends attended. He knelt, pretended to adjust a strap on the dolly, bought himself 10 seconds to think. The lobby hummed with filtered air and distant elevator chimes. This woman, whoever she was, had just offered him more money than he'd see in 2 years for one night of playing a role he'd already lived. Back when he wore suits that fit and people returned his calls. When he stood, he met her eyes again. One condition. Her eyebrow rose, elegant and skeptical. I pick my own suit. And I don't pretend to be anyone else. For the first time, she smiled. It wasn't warm. It was sharp, satisfied. The expression of someone who'd just confirmed a hypothesis. Perfect. I'm not hiring a role. I'm hiring a man no one forgets. She pulled a card from her pocket, pressed it into his palm. The paper stock felt heavy, expensive. Victoria Ashford Sinclair, CEO, Sinclair Dynamics. Below that, a phone number with no email, no address, just 10 digits that probably connected to people who made decisions that moved markets. My assistant will contact you tomorrow with details. The wedding is Saturday at 6. Greenwich, Connecticut. The Ashford Estate. The name hit like a brick through glass, sudden and destructive. Dominic's hand tightened on the card, creasing one corner. Greenwich, Ashford. 5 years collapsed into 5 seconds, and he was back in that coffee shop in Cambridge, watching Jackson Powell sign papers while lawyers smiled, and his life's work became someone else's line item on a quarterly report. Victoria Ashford Sinclair was already walking away, heels clicking a rhythm that sounded like countdown. Dominic stood there holding a business card and a dolly full of water no one would drink. Trying to remember how to breathe around the weight of a name he'd spent half a decade trying to forget. The apartment smelled like burnt pasta and Zara's lavender shampoo when Dominic got home 3 hours later. His daughter sat at the kitchen table, tongue poking out in concentration as she balanced a cardboard box on top of a shoebox, creating a structure that defied both physics and common sense. She looked up when he walked in, signed, "How was work?" with hands still dusty from whatever art project had preceded the architecture. Long. He dropped his keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, the lopsided one Zara had made in kindergarten, glazed in colors that hurt to look at directly. What are you building? Future Boston, with sky bridges and no cars because cars are bad for the environment. She placed another box, creating a tunnel system that looked one breath away from collapse. Mrs. Patterson says we're killing the planet. Mrs. Patterson's not wrong. Dominic knelt beside her, steadied a box that was listing dangerously. But maybe we can fix it. Can you fix it? The question was innocent, the kind 7-year-olds asked because they still believed adults had answers. Dominic thought about the Ashford estate, about the people who'd be there Saturday night, the ones who made decisions that shaped markets and crushed small companies like his without noticing. Thought about the money he'd make for one night's work, money that would fix Zara's immediate problem but wouldn't touch the larger ones, the systems built to keep people like him from rising too far. I can fix some things, the rest takes time. She accepted this with a nod, already focused on her next architectural challenge, adding another box labeled in her careful printing. Library. Free books. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, professional and clipped. Background check required, standard procedure, form attached, return by noon tomorrow, VS assistant. Dominic opened the attachment on his phone, the screen too small for the legal language that filled 6 pages. Standard background authorization, credit check, criminal history, employment verification. The kind of paperwork that looked routine until you read the fine print about comprehensive digital footprint analysis and prior business affiliations. He set the phone down, picked it up, set it down again. Zara shuffled closer, her hearing aid already in place. She'd learned to do it herself last year, small fingers more dexterous than his ever were. She signed good night in a few hours, then returned to her cereal sorting, organizing Cheerios by some system only she understood. Dominic watched her pour milk, overfilling the bowl like always, and thought about $75,000. Thought about the form on his phone, The questions it would ask, the answers that would lead back to Beacon Innovations, to the 6 months in 2019 when Dominic Hayes had been someone else entirely. He'd scrubbed most of it, paid a guy in Providence who specialized in making digital ghosts disappear, wiping cached pages in old press releases, anything that connected his name to the startup that no longer existed. But scrubbing wasn't erasing. The bones were still there, buried shallow, waiting for someone with the right tools to dig. After he got Zara to bed, she ran toward her room without looking back, fearless in ways he'd never been. Dominic sat in his kitchen and filled out the form. He signed it with his thumb on the screen, watching the pixels rearrange into his name, and hit send before he could reconsider. By 2 in the afternoon the next day, his phone rang. Not a text, a call. The number had a Boston prefix but felt like it came from somewhere colder. Dominic Hayes, not a question. Victoria Ashford Sinclair's voice was unmistakable even through cellular compression. "We need to talk. Are you working?" "I'm on break." "Where?" He looked around the truck, parked behind a grocery store where he'd just delivered 12 cases of sparkling water to people who'd never notice him. "You wouldn't like it." "Address." He gave it. 15 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up, windows tinted dark enough to make the afternoon look like dusk. The rear door opened. Dominic climbed in because turning back wasn't an option anymore, not with $75,000 on the table and Zara's hearing aid on his mind. Victoria sat across from him, separated by leather and the kind of space that felt intentional. She held a tablet, screen dark. "My assistant ran your background check." Dominic's jaw tightened. "And there's nothing. No LinkedIn, no Facebook, no Twitter, no business registrations after 2020, no court filings, not even a parking ticket." She tapped the screen once and it lit up with his face. A DMV photo from his license renewal. "You exist on paper. You don't exist online. That takes effort. I value privacy. You scrubbed yourself." She leaned forward and the space between them contracted. People who do that are running from something or someone. Dominic held her gaze. The old him would have had a smooth answer, something that deflected without lying. The current him, the one who'd learned honesty through losing everything else, just told the truth. 6 years ago, I built something. A company, Beacon Innovations, supply chain optimization software for mid-sized manufacturers. Good product, clean code, real market need. He paused, feeling the old anger rise up like bile. My partner and I were 8 months from Series A when he got approached by a firm that wanted to buy us out. He said yes, I said no. Turned out my no didn't matter. He'd structured the LLC so he could sell his majority stake without my signature. Deal closed. Company dissolved. I got nothing but a non-compete so tight I couldn't even consult in my own field for 3 years. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. A recalibration. What was the company? Beacon Innovations. And the firm that bought you? Dominic pulled the wedding invitation from his pocket. He'd looked it up last night, confirmed what he already knew. He pointed to the embossed text. Ashford Capital Partners, your ex-fiance's family business. The silence in the car became physical. A pressure that made Dominic's ears ring. Victoria took the invitation, studied it like she'd never seen it before. When she looked up, her face had gone very still, the kind of still that meant everything underneath was moving too fast to track. My signature is on the approval documents. Not a question. A realization said aloud to make it real. Probably. I never saw them. Jackson handled the paperwork. By the time I knew what happened, it was done. She set the tablet aside, pressed 2 fingers to her temple. I approved 47 acquisitions that quarter. Ashford brought us deals. I rubber-stamped them. You didn't know. Dominic heard himself saying it, offering her an exit she didn't ask for. I was just a number. Target company number 23. Whatever. You can't remember every deal, no. Her voice cut sharp. But I should have asked more questions about every single one. The driver shifted in the front seat, a small movement that meant they'd been sitting too long. Victoria seemed to notice and dismiss it in the same breath. The wedding is Saturday. Will you still come? The question should have been simple. It wasn't. Dominic thought about walking into the Ashford estate, shaking hands with people who'd dismantled his life like it was a quarterly earnings adjustment. Thought about Zara, her hearing aid, the science camp she wanted to attend. Thought about the fact that sometimes survival meant swallowing rage and cashing the check. I honor my agreements, even with people who destroyed my life without noticing. The tailor shop sat on Newbury Street, wedged between a gallery that sold sculptures Dominic couldn't identify and a cafe where coffee cost more than his hourly wage. Victoria's assistant had sent the address with a time, 4 p.m. Don't be late. Dominic arrived at 3:55 because old habits died hard. Inside, the air smelled like wool and cedar and money that had been old before it was spent. A man with silver hair and a measuring tape draped around his neck looked up from a bolt of charcoal fabric, took in Dominic's work boots and cargo pants, and managed to make his smile look welcoming and doubtful at the same time. May I help you? I have an appointment under Ashford Sinclair. The doubt vanished, replaced by something more interesting. Calculation. Of course, sir. This way. The fitting room had 3 mirrors arranged to show every angle, which felt like overkill until Dominic realized the point wasn't vanity. It was precision. The tailor worked in silence, measuring inseam and sleeve length, shoulder width and chest, writing numbers in a small leather notebook that probably cost more than Dominic's truck payment. Any preferences? Something I could move in. No tie. I don't wear nooses. The tailor made a note. Open collar, then. European or American cut? Dominic had no idea what that meant. Whatever doesn't look like I'm trying too hard. The man smiled, genuine this time. Honesty. Refreshing. He disappeared into the back and returned with a navy suit, the fabric so dark it looked black until the light hit it. Italian wool, Brioni. Not flashy, but unmistakable. Dominic put it on. The jacket settled on his shoulders like it had been waiting for him. Sleeves hitting exactly at the wrist bone. Length perfect. He buttoned it, 2 buttons, the tailor had said never 3, and looked at himself in the triple mirror. The man looking back was familiar and foreign at once. Same face, same scar above his left eyebrow from a basketball game in high school. Same line of his jaw that Zara had inherited. But the suit changed the context, shifted the narrative from delivery driver to something else. Something that didn't have a name but commanded a different kind of attention. How does it feel? The tailor circled, tugging here, smoothing there. Strange. Strange how? Dominic turned, watched the jacket move with him instead of against him, like remembering something I forgot on purpose. The door opened. Victoria stepped in, flanked by her assistant, a woman who looked like she scheduled wars between breakfast meetings. Victoria stopped 3 steps inside, and for the first time since Dominic met her, her composure cracked just slightly. A blink that lasted half a second too long, a breath held and released. You clean up well. Her voice stayed neutral, but something underneath it wasn't. Dominic met her eyes in the mirror. Amazing what a billionaire's budget can do. Did you choose the open collar? I don't wear nooses. The corner of her mouth lifted, not quite a smile. Good. I don't date men who suffocate themselves to fit in. Are we dating now? Dominic turned from the mirror, facing her directly. She stepped closer and the fitting room felt smaller. No, but for one night the world might think so, and I need you to walk like you belong there. I don't have to walk like I belong. The words came from somewhere deeper than strategy, somewhere honest. I know I don't, But that doesn't mean I'll flinch. Victoria studied him, and Dominic could almost see her recalculating, adjusting some internal model of who she thought he was. Do you know what makes people like Derek sweat? What? A man who doesn't need them. She nodded once, sharp and satisfied. Then let's give him a reason to panic. The assistant cleared her throat, a sound engineered to redirect attention. The car is waiting. We have final briefing at 5. Victoria didn't move immediately. She reached out, adjusted Dominic's collar with quick, efficient fingers, the touch impersonal and somehow more intimate for it. Saturday, 6 p.m. I'll send a car at 4. That gives us time to arrive after cocktails start, late enough to make an entrance. Dominic looked at the suit in the mirror one more time, at the man wearing it who used to wear suits like this every day. What do I call you? Miss Ashford Sinclair? Victoria. Victoria, we're supposed to be close enough that my ex-fiancé wonders where I found you. She turned to leave, paused at the door. One more thing. Derek will try to place you. He has that kind of memory. Names, faces, anything that might be useful later. Don't give him more than you have to. After she left, Dominic stood alone in the fitting room while the tailor made final adjustments. He thought about Derek Ashford, about shaking the hand of a man whose family had bought Dominic's dreams like they were buying office supplies. Thought about the non-compete that had followed him for 3 years, the nights he'd spent applying for jobs he was overqualified for and never getting callbacks because his name was attached to a failed acquisition, a cautionary tale in venture capital circles. The tailor stepped back. Perfect fit. We'll have it pressed and delivered tomorrow afternoon. Dominic nodded, started to take off the jacket. In the mirror, he caught his own eyes, and for just a moment let himself imagine walking into the Ashford estate wearing this suit, carrying himself like he had every right to be there, not because he belonged, but because belonging was a choice, not a permission slip. That night, after Zara was asleep and the apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic, Dominic sat at his kitchen table with his laptop open. The screen glowed blue in the darkness, illuminating the Google search bar where he'd typed 4 words. Ashford Capital Partners Acquisitions. The results loaded slowly, his internet connection struggling like it always did after 9 p.m., when everyone in the building streamed videos at once. Press releases, news articles, a Wikipedia page that listed Derek Ashford as managing director. Harvard MBA 2011, specializing in mid-market acquisitions and corporate restructuring. Dominic scrolled down. Notable acquisitions 2017 to 2020. The list ran long. 23 companies. Total value, $487 million. Number 17. Beacon Innovations, July 2019, $5.2 million. Dominic stared at that line until the words blurred. 5.2 million. Jackson had gotten 3.1 million for his 52% stake. Dominic's 48%, the shares he'd earned through 2 years of coding until 3 in the morning and eating ramen for dinner and building something real from nothing, had been valued at $2.1 million that he never saw. The non-compete clause had been Jackson's idea, or so the lawyer had said. Protection for the buyer, ensuring Dominic couldn't immediately start a competing venture. 3 years in Massachusetts plus 6 surrounding states. By the time it expired in July 2022, the market had moved on. The investors who might have backed him had found other horses to bet on, and Dominic was too busy keeping Zara fed and housed to think about startups. He clicked on Derek Ashford's LinkedIn profile, which hadn't been updated in 8 months. The photo showed a man in his late 30s, dark hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Dominic's monthly rent. The smile was practiced, the kind that came from years of knowing you were supposed to look approachable while remaining fundamentally untouchable. Education, Phillips Exeter Academy, Yale University, BA Economics 2009, Harvard Business School, MBA 2011. Experience: Ashford Capital Partners 2011 to present. Managing Director 2016 to present. Skills: private equity, mergers and acquisitions, corporate restructuring, strategic planning, recommendations. 47 people had endorsed Derek for various competencies. Dominic recognized none of the names. He closed the laptop before the anger could build into something he'd regret, something that would keep him awake until dawn. Tomorrow he'd get the briefing documents Victoria mentioned. Tomorrow he'd learn exactly who would be at this wedding, what to expect, how to play the role he'd been hired for. Tonight he just needed to remember that this was a transaction. $75,000 for one evening of pretending to be someone's date while the man who'd forgotten Dominic's name watched and wondered, and maybe if Victoria got her way, felt something approximating regret. Dominic checked on Zara one more time before bed. She'd kicked off her blankets like always, sprawled across the mattress in a tangle of limbs and dreams. Her hearing aid sat on the nightstand where she'd placed it with the careful precision of someone who understood that some things couldn't be replaced if lost. He pulled the blanket back over her, kissed her forehead, and walked back to his own room with the weight of Saturday settling on his shoulders like that navy suit, perfectly fitted and impossible to shrug off. His phone buzzed one final time. A text from Victoria's assistant. Briefing documents attached. Review before Saturday. Car arrives 4 p.m. sharp. Dominic opened the attachment. 20 pages. Guest list, seating chart, background on Derek Ashford and his fiancée Natalie Monroe, brief bios of key attendees. He scrolled through names he didn't recognize, titles that sounded important. Managing Director, Senior Partner, Chief Investment Officer, the kind of people who shook hands and ended careers in the same conversation. At the bottom of page 12, a note in smaller font. Derek Ashford, 37, Managing Director at Ashford Capital Partners, Yale undergrad, Harvard MBA. Specialized in mid-market acquisitions and corporate restructuring. Led 23 successful acquisitions. 2017 to 2020. Total value, $487 million. Dominic's company would have been one of those 23, a footnote in someone's PowerPoint, a line item in a quarterly report. He closed the document, set the phone face down on the nightstand, and tried to sleep, knowing it wouldn't come easy, knowing that somewhere in Greenwich, Connecticut, Derek Ashford was probably sleeping soundly, unaware that in 3 days he'd shake hands with a ghost he'd created and forgotten. The briefing happened Thursday evening in Victoria's office, 43rd floor. Windows offering views of Boston Harbor that turned the Atlantic into a painting most people would never afford to own. Dominic arrived at 6, still wearing his work uniform. The polyester shirt with his name stitched above the pocket, a sharp contrast to the leather chairs and mahogany desk that probably cost more than his annual salary. Victoria's assistant, whose name turned out to be Paulina, handed him a leather folder embossed with initials he couldn't quite read. Inside, the 20 pages he'd skimmed on his phone, now printed on paper stock that felt expensive between his fingers. Page 1. Venue details. The Ashford Estate, built 1887, 42 acres in Greenwich, Connecticut. Original construction funded by timber rights when Connecticut still had forests worth cutting. Currently used for weddings, fundraisers, political dinners. Restored 2003. Historic Preservation Award 2005. Page 2. Guest list. 217 names sorted alphabetically. He recognized none of them but understood what they represented. Old money, new money. The kind of people who moved between both worlds with the ease of someone who'd never had to think about money at all. Page 5. Derek Ashford, detailed profile. Born 1987, Greenwich. Phillips Exeter Academy, Yale Economics, Harvard MBA. Joined family firm 2011, promoted to managing director 2016. Engaged to Victoria Ashford Sinclair December 2022. Ended engagement September 2023. Engaged to Natalie Monroe November 2023. Page 7. Natalie Monroe. Born 1992, Old Lyme, Connecticut. Vassar College, Art History Family, Monroe Shipping, established 1891, net worth estimated $400 million, primarily in maritime assets and Connecticut real estate. Dominic looked up from the folder. So he traded you for someone with a cleaner reputation. Victoria stood at the window, back to him, silhouette sharp against the darkening sky. He traded me for someone whose family never made headlines. After the SEC story ran about Ashford Capital's violations, Derek needed distance from controversy. Natalie's family is old Connecticut, the kind that's been respectable so long they've forgotten what scandal looks like. What was the violation? Front-running client trades, using proprietary information to benefit family accounts before executing client orders. Nothing that would put anyone in prison, but enough to make investors nervous. And you wouldn't kill the story. I refused to use my media connections to bury journalism. Derek asked me to call in favors, lean on editors, make it disappear. I said no. 2 weeks later, he was engaged to Natalie. Victoria turned from the window and Dominic caught the exhaustion she'd been hiding. Shadows beneath her eyes, tension in her shoulders that expensive suits couldn't quite disguise. The wedding is also a message. Derek marrying into Monroe money, on family grounds with everyone who matters in attendance. He's saying he's untouchable, that one bad story doesn't define him, that he can still close deals and command rooms, and you're bringing me to say what? That he's not the only one who can move on, that his choices have consequences he didn't anticipate, that the woman he left is doing just fine with someone he can't categorize or dismiss. Dominic set the folder down. You know they'll try. Categorize me. Figure out where I fit. Let them try. Victoria moved to her desk, pulled up something on her computer screen. I've arranged for a car to pick you up Saturday at 4. The drive is 2 hours with traffic. We'll arrive at 6:15 after cocktails have started, but before dinner seating. Late enough to make an entrance. She turned the screen toward him. A seating chart, tables numbered 1 through 22. We're at table 6. Not the worst placement, but not honored either. Derek's way of acknowledging my presence while signaling I'm no longer inner circle. Who else is at table 6? Victoria pulled up another document. Lawrence and Patricia Henderson, Real Estate Development. Priya Chaudhary, Venture Capital. Someone named Eugene Park, semi-retired from private equity. And 2 empty seats, which means Derek hasn't decided who else deserves our table. Dominic studied the chart, the careful geography of status and snubs. What happens when Derek recognizes my name? When he puts together that I'm from Beacon Innovations? Victoria's expression shifted, something calculating moving behind her eyes. He won't. You said yourself you were just a number. Target company 23. Derek processed your acquisition, signed off, moved to the next deal. He doesn't remember the founders, just the returns, but if he does, then we tell a version of the truth. You consulted in supply chain logistics, moved into different work, met me through professional circles, all technically accurate. Lying by omission, surviving by strategy. Victoria closed her laptop. Derek will try to establish dominance. Small comments, subtle dismissals, ways of making you feel out of place. He does it to everyone, but he'll do it more with you because you're there with me. And I'm supposed to what? Take it? No. You're supposed to exist with the confidence of someone who doesn't need his approval. Victoria walked around the desk, sat in the chair across from Dominic rather than behind the barrier of mahogany. The people at this wedding measure worth in credentials and connections. They'll see a black man in an expensive suit and make assumptions. Some will assume you're tech money, new rich. Others will assume you're entertainment, sports, something more palatable to their worldview. Let them assume. Don't correct unless asked directly. That's exhausting. Welcome to my world. She leaned back, and Dominic saw the weariness more clearly now. The cost of operating in spaces that required constant translation of self. I've spent my entire career being the woman in the room, the young CEO who inherited her position, the diversity hire who actually earned her seat. Every meeting is a test, every decision scrutinized twice as hard. You learn to exist anyway, to take up space not because you're welcome, but because you refuse to shrink. Dominic thought about the delivery routes he'd run for 7 years, the loading docks and service elevators, the invisibility that came with wearing a uniform and pushing a dolly. Thought about the boardrooms he'd sat in before Jackson's betrayal, when Beacon was growing and investors took meetings, when he'd been the technical founder who had to prove he understood business too. I know what it's like to be underestimated. Good. Then Saturday will just be remembering who you were before they made you forget. Friday afternoon, the suit arrived in a garment bag that Dominic was afraid to touch without washing his hands first. He hung it in his closet next to work shirts and jeans, the navy Brioni looking like it belonged in a different apartment, a different life. Zara came home from school with another art project. This one a model of the solar system made from painted styrofoam balls suspended on fishing line. She held it carefully, a universe balanced in 7-year-old hands. Mrs. Patterson says Pluto isn't a planet anymore, but I included it anyway because it's still there even if scientists change their minds. Smart thinking. Dominic helped her hang it from the ceiling in her room, the planet spinning slowly in the air current from the heat vent. Where are you going tomorrow? The fancy party? Work event. Should be back late, so Mrs. Chen from downstairs will make you dinner. The one who makes really good dumplings? That's her. Zara studied the solar system, made a minor adjustment to Jupiter's position. Is the shiny shoe lady going to be there? Dominic had wondered when Zara would ask. His daughter had met Victoria exactly once, that brief collision in the Sinclair Tower lobby 3 days ago. But Zara cataloged people with the precision of someone who'd learned early that missing social cues could mean missing everything. Yes. Do you like her? The question deserved honesty, even when honesty was complicated. I think she's someone who's been hurt and is trying not to show it. Like when you fell off your bike and didn't cry until we got home. Zara nodded, understanding in the way children understood pain that came delayed. Are you going to help her feel better? I'm going to try. That night, Dominic dreamed of boardrooms and betrayal, of Jackson Powell's face as he signed documents that meant nothing to him and everything to Dominic, of lawyers explaining how majority stake worked when you'd trusted the wrong person to structure your company. He woke at 4 in the morning, couldn't fall back asleep, made coffee and sat at the kitchen table reviewing the briefing documents one more time. By noon, his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Car confirmed for 4 p.m. Wear the suit. Don't overthink it. See you in Greenwich. At 3:30, Dominic showered and dressed, the suit fitting exactly as it had in the tailor shop. The mirror showed a man who looked like he belonged at weddings in Connecticut estates. But Dominic knew mirrors lied. Belonging wasn't about clothes. It was about confidence that came from never having to prove you deserved the space you occupied. Mrs. Chen arrived at 3:45 with a container of dumplings and a crossword puzzle book. Zara hugged Dominic goodbye, signed "Be careful," and returned to her homework with the focus of someone twice her age. The black sedan pulled up at 4 exactly. Same driver as before, same tinted windows. Dominic climbed in and the world shifted from Dorchester to something else. From neighborhood where people worked 3 jobs to neighborhoods where work was something other people did. Victoria sat in the back, wearing black that managed to be elegant and severe at once, a dress that suggested armor more than seduction. Her hair was pulled back, exposing the line of her neck, a diamond necklace catching light that shouldn't have existed in the car's dim interior. She looked at him, and something passed between them that wasn't quite recognition but felt close. You look different. So do you. The car pulled into traffic, smooth and silent, the kind of ride that cost more per mile than Dominic made per hour. Victoria held a slim folder, black leather embossed with initials. Last chance to back out. I wired half the payment this morning. $37,500. Check your account. Dominic pulled out his phone, opened his banking app. The balance made his throat close. $37,747.32. Half of $75,000 exactly, sitting in an account that had never seen 5 figures. I checked. Then this is happening. Victoria opened the folder, pulled out a single sheet of paper. One thing I need to tell you before we arrive. About the venue. Dominic waited. The Ashford estate isn't just a wedding location. It's where Ashford Capital Partners was founded in 1952, where they still hold annual partner meetings, where they make the decisions that shape their acquisition strategy. You're walking into the place where your company's fate was likely decided. The car's interior became smaller. Dominic forced his breathing to stay even, forced his hands to stay relaxed on his thighs. So I'm walking into the place where they decided to buy Beacon. Probably. I don't know where specific deals are discussed, but yes, this is their seat of power. Victoria set the folder aside, leaned forward slightly. If that's too much, tell me now. We can turn around. You keep the money. I'll handle this alone. Dominic looked at her, really looked, saw past the makeup and the dress and the diamond necklace that probably cost more than his truck. Saw someone who'd built something real and was using it as a weapon against a man who'd discarded her for better optics. Number. I'm going because leaving would mean he wins. Victoria held his gaze for 3 seconds. 4, 5. Then she nodded once, sharp and final. All right then. Let's make him regret every choice that led him here. The car merged onto I-95, heading north toward Connecticut, toward Greenwich, toward a wedding that was really a battlefield dressed in flowers and string quartets. Dominic watched Boston disappear in the rear window, the city where he'd rebuilt himself from nothing, where Zara was probably eating dumplings with Mrs. Chen and building imaginary futures out of cardboard boxes. His phone buzzed. A text from Zara typed slowly with 7-year-old precision. Good luck. Remember karate. They'd had a conversation weeks ago about self-defense, about what to do if someone was mean. Dominic had explained he didn't know karate, but the idea had stuck in Zara's mind as a solution to all confrontation. He typed back, remember vegetables, they're code for doing hard things that were good for you. Victoria was watching him, expression unreadable. Your daughter? Yeah. What did you tell her about tonight? That I'm helping someone with a project? Victoria's mouth quirked, almost a smile. Technically accurate. She knows I used to do different work, that things changed. She doesn't know why because she doesn't need that weight. She will eventually when she's older. Maybe. Or maybe I protect her from it. Let her think her dad was always just a delivery guy who makes terrible pasta and doesn't know karate. But you weren't always. And she should know what you built, what you lost, what you survived. The certainty in Victoria's voice surprised him. Why? Because hiding your scars teaches her to hide hers. And that's not protection. That's just teaching her to shrink. Dominic had no answer for that. No defense that didn't sound like excuse. He sat in silence while the car 8 miles, while the sun dropped lower and painted the sky in colors that looked like ending. Victoria didn't push, didn't try to fill the quiet. She just sat across from him, close enough to touch and carefully not touching. 2 people riding toward the same destination for completely different reasons. The GPS chimed softly, arriving in 15 minutes. Victoria straightened, pulled a compact from her purse, checked her makeup with the efficiency of someone performing pre-flight checks. When we arrive, stay close. Let me make the introductions. Derek will approach within the first 10 minutes. He won't be able to help himself. His fiancée Natalie will try to diffuse. She's good at that, smoothing over his sharp edges, making him seem warmer than he is. And I do what? Exist? Be polite. If he asks what you do, tell him you work in logistics. It's not a lie. If he asks specifics, tell him you're consulting independently. Also not a lie. It's not the whole truth either. Welcome to high society. No one tells the whole truth. We just choose which parts to display. Victoria snapped the compact closed. The car turned onto a private road, trees closing in on both sides like walls. Dominic's heart rate picked up despite himself. Adrenaline preparing for a threat his rational mind knew wasn't physical. This was just a wedding. Just a night of standing in a suit, drinking champagne he wouldn't taste, pretending to be someone's date while the world watched and wondered. Just the place where his life had ended once before, dressed up in flowers and careful choreography. The estate appeared around a curve like something from a film, all stone and ivy and windows that caught the dying light. Cars lined the circular drive, Mercedes and BMW and a Bentley that looked like it had been polished with silk. Valets in white jackets moved between them, efficient as surgery. The sedan rolled to a stop. The driver got out, opened Victoria's door first. She stepped out in one smooth motion, heels finding gravel with the certainty of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Dominic's door opened. He climbed out, and the world shifted into high definition. Cameras flashing, voices calling Victoria's name, the rustle of fabric and perfume and barely contained curiosity. Victoria appeared beside him, slipped her arm through his with a touch that felt rehearsed and real at once. "Ready?" Dominic looked at the Ashford estate, at the people gathered on the terrace, at the cameras tracking their every movement. Looked at Victoria beside him, this woman who'd hired him to be a weapon in a war he'd joined without knowing. "Let's go." They walked toward the entrance together, toward the music and laughter and the man who'd cost Dominic everything without even bothering to learn his name. The cameras followed, documenting each step, turning a private revenge into public spectacle. Dominic kept his shoulders back, his stride even, his face neutral. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He was here, and sometimes that was enough to crack the whole foundation. The terrace opened into a world Dominic had forgotten existed. White linen covering tables set with crystal that caught sunset like currency. Waiters gliding between clusters of people who wore their wealth the way other people wore skin, casual and unconscious. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable in a corner gazebo wrapped in roses that probably cost more than Dominic's monthly rent. The air smelled like money and the kind of flowers that died within hours of being cut. Victoria's hand tightened slightly on his arm, a signal Dominic couldn't decode. They descended 3 stone steps into the garden proper, and conversation stuttered around them like engines misfiring. Heads turned. A woman in emerald silk whispered to her companion behind a champagne flute. 2 men in identical navy suits stopped mid-sentence to stare. Derek Ashford stood near the fountain, one hand on his fiancée's waist, the other holding court with 3 older men who nodded at whatever he was saying. He wore his tuxedo-like armor, perfectly pressed, perfectly fitted, perfectly everything. Then he saw Victoria. His expression flickered, surprise then something harder, than the smooth mask of someone who'd learned to hide reactions before they could be weaponized. He excused himself from his audience and crossed the terrace with his fiancée in tow. Natalie Monroe moved like water, all grace and careful navigation, her wedding dress an architectural marvel of lace and structural engineering. Up close, she had kind eyes and a smile that worked too hard. Derek extended his hand to Victoria. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Victoria took it briefly, released it like she was handling evidence. "I always honor formal invitations, especially when they're dressed like provocations." Natalie's smile tightened at the edges. We're so glad you could make it. And your friend? The pause before friend carried weight. Dominic stepped forward, not waiting for Victoria's introduction, taking control of the moment before it could be shaped by someone else. Dominic Hayes. Derek's handshake was firm, competitive, the kind men used to establish hierarchy. His eyes narrowed slightly, searching for recognition, filing the name somewhere in that strategic mind. Have we met? You look familiar. I have one of those faces. Natalie turned her attention to Dominic, and he saw her calculating too, trying to place him in their social ecosystem. What do you do, Dominic? Logistics, supply chain management. All technically true, though the scope had shrunk from building software to delivering water bottles. Derek's face shifted, subtle as fault lines. Interesting. What company? Victoria's hand found Dominic's elbow, a touch that looked affectionate but felt protective. Dominic's an independent consultant. He prefers the flexibility. The lie landed smooth and Derek accepted it with a nod, though something in his eyes suggested he was still processing, still searching his mental database for where this face and name intersected. Dominic held his gaze, neither challenging nor backing down, just existing in the space with the same right as anyone else here. Well, enjoy the evening. Natalie's voice carried forced brightness. Dinner is at 7, dancing after. Victoria, you're at table 6. They moved away, Derek's hand returning to Natalie's waist, but he glanced back once. Dominic caught it, the backward look of someone who knew they were missing something, who couldn't quite place the ghost standing in their garden. Victoria exhaled slowly. That went better than expected. He recognized my name, possibly, or he's just suspicious by nature. She guided Dominic toward the bar, a mahogany structure manned by 3 bartenders in crisp white shirts. Either way, the seed is planted. Now we water it. A waiter appeared with a tray of champagne. Victoria took 2 glasses, handed one to Dominic. The crystal felt impossibly delicate in his calloused hand, like it might shatter if he breathed wrong. To provocations. Victoria raised her glass. Dominic met it with his own. The clink sounded like breaking, like all the ghosts they were raising. And the consequences they create, the champagne tasted like apples and regret. Dominic sipped it slowly, aware that getting drunk would serve no one's purpose here. Around them, the party continued its careful choreography. Air kisses and handshakes. Laughter that sounded rehearsed. Conversations that carried the weight of deals being made in the spaces between small talk. A woman approached, 60s with silver hair and the posture of someone who'd spent decades being photographed. Victoria, darling, I heard you were coming but didn't believe it until now. Victoria's face arranged itself into warmth, though Dominic could see the performance in it. Margaret, you look wonderful. I look old, but thank you for lying beautifully. Margaret's eyes landed on Dominic with the precision of a targeting system. And who is this? Dominic Hayes. Margaret offered her hand, and Dominic shook it gently. Her grip was stronger than expected. Hayes, are you from the Boston Hayes family? No, ma'am, just the regular kind. She laughed, genuine and surprised. Refreshing. Everyone here is from some family or another. Gets tedious. She turned back to Victoria. I wanted to tell you what you did last month with the Caldwell acquisition restructuring. Brilliant. My nephew works there. You probably saved his job. Something passed over Victoria's face too fast for Dominic to catch. Just correcting a mistake that should never have been made. Still takes courage to admit when your company's been on the wrong side. Margaret squeezed Victoria's hand once, a gesture of solidarity, then glided away toward another conversation. Dominic waited until she was out of earshot. What was that about? Nothing that concerns tonight? Everything about you concerns tonight. I'm supposed to be your date. Victoria set her champagne down on a passing tray, took a fresh one in its place. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my company had engaged in some aggressive acquisition practices. Hostile takeovers disguised as friendly mergers, restructurings that were really just layoffs with prettier language. I fixed what I could, but it cost me. Cost you what? My relationship with my father. He was the one pushing those strategies. When I reversed them, I essentially told the world he was wrong. He hasn't spoken to me since. The string quartet shifted into something minor key, and the garden seemed to darken, though the sun hadn't quite set. Is that why Derek left? Because you started caring about the collateral damage? Victoria's laugh came sharp, humorless. Derek left because I wouldn't bury a story about Ashford Capital's SEC violations. He asked me to use my media connections to kill it before publication. I refused. 2 weeks later, he was engaged to Natalie, whose family is old money, Connecticut royalty, clean reputation. Everything Derek needed after that story ran. She finished her champagne in one swallow. He didn't leave me for her. He left me for what she represented. The dinner bell chimed, actual silver bells rung by staff in white gloves. Guests began moving toward the main house, toward the ballroom where tables had been set with the kind of precision usually reserved for surgery. Victoria and Dominic followed the flow, his hand finding the small of her back. Not because the script required it, but because something in her posture said she needed anchoring. Table 6 sat near the edge of the room, close enough to see everything but far enough to signal lesser status. The message was clear. Victoria had been invited but not honored. Dominic pulled out her chair and she sat with the kind of grace that made the slight look intentional. The others arrived in sequence. Lawrence and Patricia Henderson, 50s, discussing property values in Fairfield County. Priya Chaudhary, late 30s, venture capital, spending the first 5 minutes name-dropping her portfolio companies. Eugene Park, early 60s, saying little but watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. Dinner arrived in courses, each played a work of art Dominic felt guilty disrupting with his fork. Seared scallops gave way to duck confit, then lamb so tender it required no knife. The conversation around the table skated across safe topics. The weather, summer plans, a gallery opening in Manhattan that everyone seemed to have attended except Dominic and Victoria. Priya leaned toward Dominic during the third course. So you're in logistics? That must be fascinating. The word fascinating carried the weight of polite dismissal. It has its moments. Someone has to make sure goods get from point A to point B. Without us, your portfolio companies would just be ideas with nowhere to go. Something flickered across her face, reassessment. Fair point. What's your take on the supply chain disruptions we saw last year? Dominic knew this territory. He'd built Beacon Innovations specifically to solve these problems, had spent 2 years researching bottlenecks and inefficiencies before writing a single line of code. The knowledge was still there, archived but accessible. Most disruptions come from lack of real-time visibility. Companies run on legacy systems that can't talk to each other. By the time they know there's a problem, it's already cost them millions. What they need is integrated tracking with predictive analytics, something that can flag issues before they cascade. Priya set down her fork, attention fully engaged. Now you're talking about AI-driven logistics. I'm talking about smart systems. Doesn't have to be artificial intelligence, just has to be intelligent. Victoria's hand found his under the table, squeezed once. A warning or approval, Dominic couldn't tell. He'd said too much, revealed expertise that didn't match his cover story. But Priya was nodding, already launching into a discussion about a startup she'd funded that was trying to do exactly what Dominic described. And the moment passed, absorbed into the general din of conversation and clinking crystal. Eugene Park spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of someone who chose words carefully. You remind me of someone I worked with years ago. engineer who understood business better than most MBAs I've met. Small world. Dominic kept his response neutral, not wanting to pursue that thread. The speeches began as dessert plates were cleared. Derek stood at the head table, Natalie beaming beside him, and launched into the kind of speech that hit every expected note. Gratitude, love, future, promise. His voice carried the smoothness of someone who'd given many speeches, who knew exactly how to modulate tone for maximum effect. But when his eyes swept the room and landed on Victoria, something in his delivery faltered. A syllable held too long, a breath taken at the wrong moment. Then he recovered, finished the toast to applause, and raised glasses. Victoria didn't raise hers. She sat perfectly still, eyes locked on Derek, and Dominic could feel the temperature drop around her. This was what she'd come for, not to disrupt the wedding, but to be present for Derek's moment and refuse to celebrate it, to be the reminder that walked, the price he'd paid made visible. The orchestra began playing as dinner plates were cleared. Couples rose to dance, filling the floor with careful waltzes and prescribed movements. Derek led Natalie out first, her dress creating its own weather system of fabric and light. They moved well together, practiced, the kind of dancing that came from lessons and rehearsal. Victoria pushed back from the table. "Would you like to dance?" Dominic hadn't danced since his wedding to Sienna 9 years ago in a VFW hall with a DJ who played too much top 40. But he stood, offered his hand, and led Victoria onto the floor because refusing would break the spell they were casting. She fit against him differently than Sienna had, taller, more angular, carrying herself with the tension of someone who'd learned to trust no one. Dominic placed his hand on her back, felt her spine straight as rebar beneath the silk. They moved into the waltz, and his feet remembered the steps his mother had taught him when he was 12 and awkward and certain he'd never need this knowledge. The orchestra played something classical, violins weaving through cellos. Derek watched from the edge of the floor, champagne forgotten in his hand, Natalie saying something he clearly wasn't hearing. Dominic held Derek's gaze for 3 beats, 4, then turned Victoria away, breaking the line of sight. "He's rattled." Victoria's breath warmed Dominic's ear. "Good. That's what you're paying me for. I'm paying you to exist. The rattling is just a bonus." The song shifted into something slower, more intimate. Couples pressed closer. Dominic maintained the respectful distance, even as every instinct said to pull Victoria in, to close the gap between performance and reality. She seemed to sense it, tilted her head back to look at him. "What are you thinking?" The honest answer would have been complicated, something about how her hand felt in his, how the suit made him remember who he used to be, how dangerous it was to pretend at intimacy when the reasons were tactical. Instead, he told a different truth. "That you don't flinch even when you should." Her expression softened just at the edges. "I used to, until flinching became a liability I couldn't afford." "That's not strength. That's survival. What's the difference?" Dominic thought about the years after Beacon collapsed, the months of job applications and rejection emails, the night he'd stood in his apartment with Zara asleep in the next room and a bottle of whiskey, and the kind of thoughts that came when survival looked worse than the alternative. Thought about choosing to wake up the next morning and the morning after that until choosing became habit, became life. Strength is knowing you could break and deciding not to. Survival is just not breaking yet. The music ended. Applause scattered across the ballroom. Victoria stepped back and the space between them felt colder. Derek was approaching, cutting across the floor with purpose, Natalie trailing behind, looking apologetic. He stopped 2 feet away, close enough that Dominic could smell his cologne, something expensive and aggressive. "Victoria, could we speak privately?" Victoria's face arranged itself into polite ice. "We've already spoken, Derek. You sent an invitation. I responded by attending. Our conversation is complete. 5 minutes. Please." The please sounded like it cost him. Dominic moved to step away, but Victoria's hand caught his wrist. Stay. Derek's jaw tightened. This isn't about him. No, it's about you wanting control of a narrative that's no longer yours to shape. Victoria released Dominic's wrist but didn't move away. You made your choices, married the right family, secured the right connections. I'm here to witness that victory, nothing more. I didn't marry her for connections, then you're lying to yourself more effectively than you lied to me. Natalie touched Derek's arm, gentle but firm. Darling, people are watching. Derek glanced around, registered the turned heads, the phones probably recording this exchange for later dissection. His face smoothed, public mask sliding back into place. Enjoy the rest of the evening, Victoria. Dominic. He said Dominic's name like he was testing it, rolling it around to see if it fit some pattern he recognized. Then he walked away, Natalie beside him, her dress whispering apologies the rest of her couldn't voice. Victoria's hand found Dominic's again, and this time he knew it wasn't performance. Her fingers were shaking, barely perceptible, but there. I need air. They moved through the ballroom toward French doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the garden. The night had settled fully now, stars competing with estate lighting and losing. Dominic could hear the party continuing behind them, laughter and music and the clink of crystal. But out here, the air tasted like rain that hadn't fallen and grass cut too short. Victoria gripped the balcony railing, knuckles white. I thought seeing him marry her would feel like closure. Her voice came rough, like words forcing their way past barriers. It just feels like watching someone get away with something. He didn't get away with anything. You're still standing. That's not nothing. I'm standing in the place he built, wearing armor I hate, pretending a stranger is my salvation. She turned to face him. How is that winning? Dominic looked at her, this woman who'd hired him to be a prop in her revenge play, who was discovering that revenge tasted like ash even when perfectly executed. It's not about winning. It's about refusing to disappear. Something in her face cracked then, not breaking but shifting, tectonic plates realigning. Is that what you did after your company fell apart? Refused to disappear? I tried to disappear, spent 2 years trying. But I had Zara and she kept seeing me even when I was trying to fade. Eventually I realized I could be invisible to the world or present for her. Not both. And you chose her. I chose not to make her lose both parents. Victoria processed this, eyes searching his face for something. Truth maybe, or permission to feel what she was feeling. Your ex-wife, where is she? The question should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt inevitable, like they'd been moving toward this level of honesty since the moment she'd adjusted his collar in the fitting room. Gone. She left when Zara was 2. Addiction, chaos. I fought for custody and won. Haven't heard from her in 4 years. He paused, the old pain surfacing. Until 2 days ago. She's suing for custody now. Says she's been sober 8 months, has a job, an apartment, therapy compliance. Court date in 3 weeks. Victoria's expression shifted. Does she have a case? My lawyer thinks so. Not for full custody, but supervised visitation at minimum. Courts favor reunification, especially when addiction's involved and sobriety's documented. And that terrifies you. Dominic nodded, throat tight. Zara doesn't remember her. In her world, mothers are theoretical concepts other kids have. Now Sienna wants back in and I have to watch my daughter meet a stranger who says she loves her. Victoria reached out, touched his face, the gesture so unexpected Dominic froze. Her palm was warm against his cheek, her eyes holding something he couldn't name but recognized anyway, the look of someone seeing past armor to the person underneath. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who needed me. You don't need anyone. Dominic caught her hand, held it against his face for one more second before lowering it gently. Everyone needs someone. I'm just selective about who. A burst of laughter from inside broke the moment. Victoria pulled back, smoothed her dress though it didn't need smoothing. We should go back. People will talk if we're gone too long. People are already talking. Then let's give them something worth the effort. They returned to the ballroom, and within 10 minutes, Dominic's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He opened the message and his blood went cold. A photo, him and Victoria on the terrace, his hand on her back, her face turned toward his, below it a caption. Billionaire CEO's mystery man. Who is Dominic Hayes? The article loaded beneath the image. Speculation dressed as journalism, questions about his background, his connection to Victoria, his intentions. Already 37 comments, people weighing in with theories ranging from plausible to absurd. Victoria leaned over, saw the screen, cursed softly. So it begins. What begins? The excavation. By tomorrow, someone will have connected you to Beacon Innovations. By next week, they'll have the whole story. The party wound down near 11. Derek and Natalie stood by the entrance, thanking everyone personally. When Victoria and Dominic reached them, Natalie embraced Victoria quickly. Thank you for coming. It means more than you know. Derek shook Dominic's hand again, and this time his grip said something different. Not competition, but warning. Dominic Hayes. I'll remember that name. Dominic met his eyes, steady and unflinching. I hope you do. The black sedan waited in the circular drive. Inside, silence settled heavy, the kind that followed adrenaline crashes and performance exhaustion. Victoria kicked off her heels, curled her legs beneath her. When we get back to Boston, you'll have the other half of the payment within 24 hours. She paused. Unless you'd like to have dinner sometime. No cameras, no performance. Just two people who happen to find each other interesting. Dominic's chest tightened around something that felt dangerous and necessary at once. I'd like that. She smiled, small and genuine. Good, because I'm not done figuring you out, Dominic Hayes. His phone buzzed again. The photo had gone viral. 73 comments now. Someone claiming to have gone to high school with him. Someone else saying they'd worked with him at a tech company years ago. A text from Victoria appeared. Ignore it. These people don't deserve your energy. The car pulled up to Dominic's building just after midnight. Mrs. Chen met him at the door. She's sleeping. Was an angel. Dominic paid her $60 instead of $40, checked on Zara, then collapsed into bed with his phone showing 112 comments and climbing. Sunday brought reporters to his building. Monday morning, his supervisor called. Hayes, corporate wants you on paid leave. You're a distraction. 2 weeks. Your job will be here when you get back. The implicit threat was clear. After he hung up, Zara looked up from her cereal. Are you in trouble? No, sweetheart. Just taking some time off work. That afternoon, registered mail arrived. Legal letterhead, family court, petition for modification of custody arrangement. Sienna Winters versus Dominic Hayes. The petition listed her argument in numbered paragraphs. Father's recent involvement with high-profile individual creates unstable media environment inappropriate for minor child with special needs. 8 months documented sobriety, stable housing, employment, therapy compliance. Everything twisted to make Dominic look reckless. He called Nathan Reeves, his lawyer. She has standing. Courts favor reunification. And Dominic, her lawyer is using your relationship with Victoria as evidence of instability. What do I do? We respond. Document everything and hope the judge sees that 4 years of consistent parenting beats 8 months of sobriety. Dominic texted Victoria without thinking. Sienna's suing for custody, using you as evidence I'm unstable. Her response came within seconds. Where are you? Home. I'm coming over. 30 minutes later, Victoria arrived in jeans and a sweater carrying coffee. She read the petition while Dominic paced. What's your lawyer saying? That she has a case, that I need to respond in hope. Victoria pulled out her phone. I'm calling Diana Rothstein, family law specialist, best in New England. I can't afford your attorneys, pro bono. She owes me a favor. Let me make the call. Dominic wanted to refuse, but he thought about Zara, about Sienna's petition, about the fact that his pride mattered less than his daughter's future. Okay. Victoria made the call on speaker. Diana Rothstein sounded sharp, asking pointed questions. She agreed to take the case, scheduled a meeting for Friday. After Victoria left, Dominic's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Sienna. I don't want to fight, I just want to see her. Can we talk? He typed. Through lawyers, that's how this works now. Her response came fast. Please, 5 minutes, just to explain. Every instinct said no. But some part of him needed to understand. He typed, Saturday. 10 a.m., Boston Public Garden, 10 minutes. Saturday morning, Dominic stood by the lagoon 15 minutes early. Sienna appeared at 9:55 wearing clean jeans and a jacket that looked new. She looked healthier than he remembered, and the sight made him angry. Thank you for coming. Dominic checked his watch. You have 10 minutes. I'm not trying to take her from you. You're suing for custody. That's exactly what you're trying to do. I'm trying to be her mother. There's a difference. You had your chance. You chose drugs. You chose to leave. I was sick. You were selfish. The words came harder than intended, years of rage finding voice. You had resources, insurance, support. You could have gone to treatment and come back. Instead, you disappeared. Left Zara with a neighbor and a note. 4 months, Sienna. She was 2 years old. Tears tracked down Sienna's face. I know I can't fix that, but I'm different now. 8 months clean, therapy 3 times a week, steady job, stable housing, for 8 months. Zara's been without you for 4 years. And whose fault is that? The question came sharp, defensive. Then Sienna caught herself. I'm sorry, you did the right thing. But she's my daughter too. I have rights. You signed those rights away, under duress. I was actively using. A judge will see that. Dominic's hands curled into fists. What do you want, Sienna? Really? I want to know her. Want her to know I didn't abandon her because I stopped loving her. I was drowning and I couldn't save us both. She stepped closer. I saw the photos. You and that woman, you've moved on, but Zara is part of me and I can't move on until I try. The manipulation was clear, using Victoria against him. But beneath it, Dominic heard genuine grief. The court will decide. Until then, you don't contact me. You don't go near Zara's school. Can I write her? Letters you could give her when she's ready? 1 letter. I'll read it first. If it's appropriate, I'll keep it. Sienna nodded. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. It's not for you. It's for Zara. He walked away, called Victoria like she'd asked. How did it go? About as expected. She cried. I stayed angry. Nothing changed except now I know she's serious. Are you okay? No, but I will be. 3 weeks felt like 3 years. Diana Rothstein prepared the case with surgical precision. Documents, medical records, school reports, therapy notes documenting Zara's stability under Dominic's care. Sienna's history of hospitalizations, police wellness checks, the 4 months she'd vanished. The morning of the hearing, April 3rd, Dominic dressed in a suit Diana had insisted he buy, cheaper than the Brioni but respectable. Suffolk County Family Court at 9. Diana met him outside carrying a leather briefcase. Remember, stay calm. Answer questions directly. Don't volunteer information. Let me handle the legal strategy. Inside, the courtroom smelled like old wood and anxiety. Sienna sat at the opposite table with her lawyer, a woman in her 40s who looked like she won cases through preparation and persistence. Judge Amanda Carlson entered, mid-50s, reading glasses perched on her nose. We're here for Winters versus Hayes. Petition for modification of custody. Ms. Patterson, You may begin. Sienna's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has made remarkable progress. 8 months documented sobriety through Serenity House recovery. Steady employment as administrative assistant, $42,000 annually. Stable housing in Quincy, 2-bedroom apartment. Therapy 3 times weekly with Dr. Michael Brennan, compliance perfect. She pulled out documents. Ms. Winters terminated her parental rights in 2021 under duress during active addiction. She was not in her right mind. She's a different person now, and she deserves the opportunity to rebuild a relationship with her daughter. But here's what concerns us. Mr. Hayes recently became involved with Victoria Ashford Sinclair, a billionaire CEO. This created a media circus. Photographers at the child's school. Mr. Hayes was placed on employment leave due to the attention. This shows poor judgment, prioritizing a romantic relationship over the child's welfare. Diana stood. Objection. Mr. Hayes's personal life is irrelevant to his fitness as a parent. Judge Carlson looked over her glasses. I'll allow it for now, but get to the point, Ms. Patterson. We're not seeking full custody, just supervised visitation. 2 hours weekly, 6-month review. Ms. Winters has earned the right to know her daughter. Diana stood for the defense. Your Honor, Mr. Hayes has been Zara's sole parent for 4 years, not 3, not 2. 4 years of perfect attendance at school, every parent-teacher conference, every medical appointment. Zara has a hearing impairment requiring specialized care. Mr. Hayes learned sign language. He coordinates with audiologists, speech therapists, educators. She pulled out a binder. Miss Winters didn't just leave. She abandoned a 2-year-old child with a neighbor for 127 days. When Mr. Hayes found Zara, the neighbor reported the child had been there for weeks with minimal contact from Mrs. Winters. Diana placed medical records on the judge's desk. Zara required therapy for abandonment trauma. She had night terrors for 6 months. It took a year before she stopped asking when Mommy was coming home. Another year before she stopped mentioning her mother at all. 8 months of sobriety is commendable, but parenthood isn't granted for effort. It's maintained through presence. Mr. Hayes has been present. Miss Winters has not. Regarding the media attention, Mr. Hayes took immediate action. He coordinated with school security, limited public exposure, prioritized his daughter's safety. That's not poor judgment. That's protective parenting. Judge Carlson made notes. I'd like to hear from the parties directly. Ms. Winters, please approach. Sienna stood, moved to the witness stand. Her hands shook slightly. Ms. Winters, why now? Why petition for custody after 4 years? Because I'm finally the mother Zara deserves. I was sick, Your Honor. Addiction took everything from me, including my ability to be present for my daughter. But I've done the work. 8 months clean, therapy, employment, stable housing. I want Zara to know I didn't abandon her because I stopped loving her. I was drowning. And you believe you're ready to be in her life? I believe she deserves the chance to know her mother. Not to replace her father, but to have both parents. Judge Carlson turned to Dominic. Mr. Hayes, approach, please. Dominic stood, legs steadier than he expected, sat in the witness stand. Mr. Hayes, Miss Patterson raised concerns about your recent relationship creating instability. How do you respond? Dominic took a breath. I met Victoria Ashford Sinclair through work. She asked me to attend a social event. I accepted because the compensation would cover my daughter's medical needs, specifically a hearing aid upgrade insurance classified as elective. The media attention was unexpected. When it occurred, I immediately coordinated with Zara's school, limited our public exposure, and prioritized her safety. Victoria and I postponed developing any relationship until after this custody matter was resolved because Zara comes first. Always. Judge Carlson made more notes. I'd like to speak with Zara. In chambers. Just myself and the child. Both counsel may observe but not participate. 10 minutes later, Judge Carlson sat across from Zara in a room decorated to be child-friendly. Dominic watched through one-way glass, Diana beside him. Zara, I'm Judge Carlson. I want to ask you some questions. Is that okay? Zara nodded, signing and speaking simultaneously. Okay. Do you know why you're here today? Daddy said someone wants to meet me. That's right. Your mother, Sienna. Do you remember her? Zara shook her head. I've seen pictures. Daddy says she was sick, but she's getting better now. Would you like to meet her? Zara's face scrunched in concentration. Maybe, but I'm scared. What are you scared of? That she'll leave again. Daddy says people sometimes leave when things get hard, but he never leaves. He's always there. Judge Carlson's expression softened. If you could choose, who would you want to live with? Zara didn't hesitate. Daddy, he's my family. The hearing resumed 30 minutes later. Judge Carlson had both lawyers stand. I've reviewed the evidence and spoken with the child. This is my ruling. Ms. Winters, I commend your recovery. Sobriety is difficult and you've made remarkable progress. However, parenthood is not granted for effort alone. It's earned through consistent presence. Mr. Hayes has been Zara's sole parent for 4 years. His record is exemplary. The recent media attention was handled appropriately and does not demonstrate poor judgment. Zara is 7 years old with special medical needs. She requires stability. Disrupting her current arrangement would not serve her best interests. However, I do believe children benefit from knowing both biological parents when safe to do so. My ruling: custody remains with Mr. Hayes. Ms. Winters is granted supervised visitation, 2 hours weekly, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. Visits will occur at the Family Services Center. After 6 months, we'll review progress and consider expanded visitation if appropriate. This court prioritizes the child's stability and welfare above all else. The gavel came down. Sienna's face crumpled. Her lawyer touched her shoulder gently. Outside the courthouse, Diana shook Dominic's hand. You did well in there. Stay consistent with the visitation schedule, document everything, and we'll reassess in 6 months. Victoria was waiting by her car, even though Dominic hadn't told her when the hearing was. You came. People who care show up. Sienna emerged from the courthouse, saw them together, looked away quickly. She approached slowly. Dominic, I know I lost, but thank you for the visitation. I'll earn more time, I promise. Her voice broke. Can I still write that letter? For her to read someday? One letter. I'll keep it sealed until she asks about you. Sienna nodded, tears falling freely now. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. She walked away toward a waiting sedan. Victoria turned to Dominic. How do you feel? Exhausted. Relieved. Scared this isn't over. It probably isn't, but you won today. Zara stays with you. That night, Dominic picked Zara up from Mrs. Chen's, where she'd spent the day doing puzzles and watching cartoons, blissfully unaware of the courtroom drama deciding her future. How was your day, sweetheart? Good. Mrs. Chen taught me how to make dumplings. They were lumpy but tasted okay. She signed as she spoke, the dual communication second nature now. Dad, am I going to meet my mom? Dominic knelt to her level. Yes, once a week for a little while, with someone there to help. Is that okay? Zara's face was serious, processing. Will you be there? Not in the room, but I'll be close, always close. She nodded, satisfied. Okay, but I still want to live with you. You will, baby. That's not changing. 2 weeks later, the media storm had passed, replaced by a gubernatorial scandal and a tech CEO's divorce. Dominic returned to work, but also scheduled interviews for senior logistics roles at 3 startups. The third interview, at a company called Vertex Supply Solutions, went better than expected. The CTO had read about Beacon Innovations years ago. Remembered Dominic's name from the original TechCrunch article. We need someone who understands both the technical and business sides. Your background is exactly what we're looking for. 92,000 full benefits equity options? Dominic accepted on the spot. That Saturday, he met Victoria for dinner. Not at her apartment, but at a small Italian restaurant in the North End that didn't care about billionaires or delivery drivers, just whether you appreciated good carbonara. You got the job. Victoria raised her wine glass. I got the job. Start in 2 weeks, to new beginnings. They clinked glasses. How's Zara handling the visitation? First visit was yesterday. She was nervous, but it went okay. Sienna brought a stuffed elephant. They played with blocks. Zara asked me afterward if her mom seemed nice. I said yes. Victoria reached across the table, took his hand. You're a good father. I'm a terrified father who's making it up as I go. That's what good fathers do. 3 months passed. Dominic started at Vertex, dove into work that challenged him intellectually for the first time in 5 years. Zara's visits with Sienna became routine, supervised but gradually more comfortable. Sienna sent postcards between visits, simple messages. Thinking of you, proud of you, love Mom. Victoria and Dominic dated carefully, slowly learning each other outside the performance. She met Zara officially, learned basic sign language, showed up to Zara's school art show. Derek and Natalie's marriage lasted 7 months before rumors of infidelity surfaced. The divorce was quiet, settled quickly, both parties eager to move on. 6 months after the custody hearing, Dominic ran into Derek at a coffee shop in downtown Boston. Derek looked diminished somehow, less certain. Their eyes met. Derek nodded once. Dominic nodded back. No words were needed. 1 year after the wedding, Dominic stood in Zara's second-grade classroom for the annual art exhibition. Parents crowded around construction paper masterpieces and clay sculptures. Zara's piece was a drawing, 3 figures holding hands. Labels beneath each: Daddy, me, Victoria. The title written in Zara's careful printing: People Who Stay. Victoria stood beside him, her hand in his. The teacher approached. She talks about you both all the time. You've built something beautiful. Walking to the car afterward, Zara skipped ahead, singing off-key. Dominic's delivery truck had been traded for a modest Honda Accord. Victoria's hand stayed in his. In the car, Zara buckled herself in. Dad, can we get ice cream? It's almost dinner time. Victoria turned around. I think ice cream before dinner is allowed sometimes. Zara pumped her fist. See, Dad? Victoria gets it. Dominic caught Victoria's eye in the rearview mirror. She smiled and he felt something settle in his chest, something that had been unsettled for 5 years. They stopped at the ice cream place on Mass Avenue, the one that stayed open year-round despite New England winters. Zara got mint chocolate chip. Victoria got coffee. Dominic got vanilla because some things didn't need to be complicated. Sitting at a sticky table while Zara colored on the paper placemats, Victoria leaned close. I have something to tell you. Dominic's heart jumped. What? Derek's firm is being investigated. SEC expanded their inquiry. Turns out the violations went deeper than anyone knew. He might actually face charges. How do you feel about that? Victoria watched Zara color, considered the question. I feel nothing. Maybe a little pity. Mostly I just feel glad I'm here instead of there. She squeezed his hand. The best revenge isn't making them suffer. It's building something they can never touch. Dominic looked at Zara, at Victoria, at the life they were building from pieces of broken things. Worth isn't measured by what they took. It's measured by what you build from what remains. That night, after Zara was asleep and Victoria had gone home, Dominic stood in his apartment that felt less like survival and more like home. His phone buzzed, a text from Sienna. Thank you for letting me be part of her life, even in small ways. She showed me her drawing today. I'm glad she has you. And Victoria. People who stay. Dominic typed back. She's lucky to have people who are trying. Keep trying. He set the phone down, checked on Zara one more time. She'd kicked off her blankets, stuffed rabbit clutched tight, hearing aid on the nightstand. He pulled the blanket back over her, kissed her forehead. In the kitchen, he made tea, sat at the scarred table, thought about the past year. The wedding, the media storm, the custody battle, the new job, the relationship with Victoria that had started as transaction and become something real. Thought about Derek Ashford, who'd forgotten his name in 2019 and would remember it now. Not because Dominic had destroyed him, but because Dominic had refused to stay destroyed. His phone buzzed one more time. Victoria, good night. See you Saturday. Zara wants to teach me more sign language. Dominic smiled, typed back. She's a tough teacher. Good luck. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I don't need luck. I have something better. I have you both. Dominic set the phone down, finished his tea, looked around his apartment, still small, still in Dorchester, still nowhere near the Ashford Estates marble and crystal. But it was enough, more than enough. Because worth wasn't measured in acquisitions or revenge or making people suffer for their sins. Worth was measured in who showed up when showing up was hard, who stayed when staying required sacrifice, who chose to be present instead of perfect. Derek Ashford had taught him he was worthless by erasing him without noticing. Victoria Ashford Sinclair had taught him he was worth remembering by choosing to see him when she could have looked away. Zara had taught him he was worth everything by never doubting it. Not once. Not even when he doubted himself. And Dominic had taught himself that you could lose everything and still build something worth having. That the past didn't have to define the future, that silence wasn't weakness but sometimes the sharpest weapon of all. He turned off the lights, climbed into bed, and for the first time in 6 years, slept through the night without doing math that didn't add up. Without planning for disasters that might not come. Without carrying the weight of what had been taken. Because what remained was enough. What remained was everything.